Hello, 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 people. Welcome back to Hammering Down. I'm your host, Gaylor Hodges, and I'm hoping you're having a great win. I told you we are into the swing of things. You actually get 2 episodes in a row, which means it's definitely the beginning of the season. Because I'm sure midway through this, I want to lose motivation once again, but that's fine. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Um, hey, we got a match against Louisville City. This is a match that usually is pretty good. It's a pretty competitive match, unless it's 2024, where no, it wasn't. And so to talk about all that and so much more, my good friend Ben Neiman, how are you?
I'm doing great. I always love getting this call to come on the Hammer Down podcast. So very excited to chat with you.
Well, for all the Louisville City people who are listening to this, which thank you, couple things. The match has been moved to Sunday at I believe 4:30 Eastern Standard, 3:30 local time for us. If you are making the drive down, I just cannot stress this enough. They are really worried about this system coming through, like it's extremely that what they are not saying. This is more for the Birmingham people. This is not an April 27th like storm system that killed almost 300 people in Alabama, but this is like a step below that, basically. So it's extremely dangerous. So if you're a Louisville City person making the trip, like find out where you're staying, figure out where the safe places are in the hotel, and find my guy, James Spann, ABC 3340. He is the guy to watch in these situations. Be weather aware, be safe. Just do not drive in this mess. Just don't do it. Don't mess with it. Come down Sunday morning if you have to. Just be weather aware. Seriously, stay safe. And to my Birmingham people, please, for the love, stay safe throughout this entire next few days. So, all right. We are just wondering, Ben, are you on the call for ESPN 680 on this match?
I am not. No, I got to do the first match because there was a little bit of a scheduling hiccup to my benefit. So I'm on the depth chart somewhere. So I will get the call up as needed and always gladly kind of take those opportunities. But I will be watching from the comfort of my couch because I'm not able to make the trek down your way.
Well, you were on the call for a great match that was featured on the Golasso network or locally on the radio. Hey, someone in Birmingham pick up Legion matches for the radio? Like, do that. Um, but you were treated to a pretty good one that was intriguing to me because I think a lot of people are going to, in the end, point at the Arturo Rodriguez red card and just be like, throw the entire match out the window. None of it counts. But also, Lou City went toe to toe with, I think, easily the best holding midfield in the league with Husu and Malloy. And I don't want to say neutralized them, but like held their, I don't even say held their own. Like they were the better squad. I mean, it was very, very even until the red card. But you're looking at two teams that are easily the top of the Eastern Conference, and for a lot of people, 1 and 2 in the entire USL. For you, did you feel like it was a deserved result, the 2-1, or did it feel more like a 1-1, 2-2 kind of match where it was that even?
It's kind of hard to say. Like you said, I felt like it was a pretty even match. Very nervous going in it, and I was very nervous until the final whistle, just because I respect the quality that the battery bring. But it's pointing out that red card did absolutely transform that game, and there was an enormous goalkeeper mistake which allowed the one goal. So
Yes.
that's like you're not going to get that one again. So I think the battery people, they're going to have something to point to, agreements to say, hey, maybe this would have gone differently, and I don't really fault them for that. Um, I look at you kind of win some, you lose some, whether it's bad officiating calls or the ball bouncing one way or another. So I will sneak out of Charleston with our points, but I don't know that we got any sort of clear definitive answer on who's the better of these two sides. So the next meeting particularly would be a lot more interesting. These teams will have had more time to kind of gel. And we'll see what happens there. We haven't had a good track record at Patriots points, so I think that was a good motivational boost, no matter how the result went down. And I think Coach Cruz was quite pleased with his team's performance there.
When I'm looking at this Louisville City team, it is largely the same squad from last year, where the players that you lose is Sebastian Sanchez, Dylan Mayers, Jorge Gonzalez, Owen Dom, Wilson Harris, Wes Sharpie, Elijah Winder. You lose Harris on a fee for him to go to Israel. Oh, by the way, his replacement is the inter USL record breaking transfer of freaking Philip Goodrum. And then you get rid of Elijah Winder. I say get rid of, you sell him on for the largest USL to MLS transfer fee ever. And you replace him with Zach Duncan and Kevin or Kevon. I never actually know.
Kevon is how
Kevon. Okay. Kevon Lambert. Where I'm not saying that they've replaced Elijah Winder, but when you look at Kevon Lambert and you look at Zach Duncan, you've recreated them in the aggregate, little Moneyball style, whatever you need there. This is a team that stayed the same. And if I'm being completely honest, arguably got better from their Players Shield winning team. Do you feel that way?
I think it's too early to say if we've gotten better or not, but like you said, largely the same. I'd like to think that there's a lot of cohesiveness that they have at this point that they didn't necessarily have at the same point last season. It does stink losing somebody like Wilson Harris's caliber. Thankfully we have Philip Goodrum is the backup. He's now the man in charge. Our biggest concern right now probably is the striker depth. We have other players that can play that role. However, they're not traditional strikers in that sense. So, woe is us, right? But in terms of the midfield replacements there, you mentioned the two there, and I kind of viewed it the same way. They bring a little bit something different to the table. One thing Coach Danny Cruz did talk about with his offseason signings is size. I think particularly against Rhode Island, that was a point in which he felt might have cost the team some. Just getting physically outplayed in some scenarios. So that was, I think that was probably a little bit of motivation for Kevon Williams. And then our new center back signing, Josh Jones, who probably doubtful that we'll see him in action early in the season, but I think he's the kind of guy that can definitely work his way into the rotation. So particularly excited about him. But as to the other ones you point out, they're probably more true and tried, like ready to go. Starters as needed.
So you bring up Josh Jones, who is an incredible talent, right? If you're looking at who he would actually play for, and we're assuming he gets starting minutes, right? Like when we say he works his way in there, he'll definitely be a rotation piece. Like if someone needs a break and after 3-4 games in a row, get him in there. An occasional spot start. We're not worried about spot starts, rotation minutes.
Yeah.
We're talking about actual playing time. I don't want to say it too loudly because he's beloved, but would Tosh not be the clear landing spot?
He's he fell out of favor once before. Was it a year or two ago? Like wasn't starting early in the season. I don't think it's last year. I think it's the year before. But it's like it's splitting hairs almost like, but yeah, that would probably be my guess. And I think a large part of that would be kind of the age factor. He's starting to kind of get a little bit up there, but in his defense, like a center back kind of role is one in which you can generally be a little older and still play successfully at. I think it's really going to be a matter of who shows up each day in practice. Coach Cruz has put a lot of emphasis in practice performance and that motivation, that desire, that drive. And he's shown that he's not afraid to make unconventional, like what looks from the outside, at least unconventional changes because of what he's seeing on the training ground or in the matches and whatnot. So, probably early to speculate. If I had to guess, like I'd say Arturo Dunas is probably the safest. But I am not ruling anything out on there. But from what I have seen of this kid in I saw two friendlies. I mean, he's 6'5", looks every bit of it. He was looking pretty sharp. He's just now, he just left college. So this is his first professional contract. So I think there's going to be a little bit of growing pains there. So I don't think there's any sense of urgency to kind of push him in some sort of role like that. But I'm pretty optimistic about his future.
One of the guys, I mean, this team had an issue last year, and it's not even an issue. They kind of had the Union Omaha issue where they had a bunch of guys that were so good that I would say almost every single player is second or third team all USL. Where there's some teams that have 2, 3 guys that are first team and the rest of the team is not good, right? But this Louisville City team felt like a team just chock full of second and third all USL teamers where they aren't going to get the recognition. They're not going to get the accolades, but you still desperately want them in your team. But the one guy who was, I think, made the all USL team and was my personal best midfielder in the league last year, Taylor Davila. Just unbelievably good, and his stats don't look sexy. Like, you're gonna see his stats and be like, "Really? You don't want a Malloy, David Torres, you don't want a Jorge Hernandez, you don't want I would say Kyle Scott's actually comparable, but still, like, you're like, "Really? Taylor Davila? What makes him so good?"
I think he has absolutely outstanding vision. As soon as you mentioned him, I thought back to the Battery match, and I forget at what point it happened, but he had this just perfect like through pass in Charleston's final third. Didn't ultimately result in anything meaningful, but the vision and the speed in which he saw that and shot that gap to whoever was running, it might have been Amadou Dia. It was outstanding. He's, I think, incredibly high soccer IQ. He's one that I'm like, why didn't an MLS team try to scoop him up? For all we know, maybe they tried to do something like that. But you never know. Incredible talent. I think we're fortunate to continue to have him. But yeah, he's definitely going to, I think, be a staple of the lineup, and I'm hoping to see some great things from him this year. He's made some outstanding goals last season. If anything, he might be the pass before the assist kind of guy in some of that buildup, because there's just still a lot of like lethal attack on this team.
The one player as well that I really want to just kind of point out, because this is kind of where we are in this season. You mentioned preseason. Okay, like, it's preseason. Like, what does it really mean? There's guys on the team who are not going to be on the team that partially they're there to be trialists, so the team is kind of interested in them. They're also, if we're being really honest, just kind of there so the stars don't get hurt before the season, right? Like, what are they? But there's a guy that I feel like truly broke out last year, and he had other good seasons. He had 7 professional seasons, in fact, despite only being 21, 22. Ray Serrano finally became the guy that we've all been dreaming on since he was in that Sounders 2 setup with Tacoma. And he had a couple of good seasons there, and he's been okay, but he's been a pro since 15. And at 22, it finally felt like it clicked.
Yeah. I mean, isn't it crazy to say how long of a professional career he's had, and he can just now like buy beer.
I mean, you just mentioned Josh, right? He's just got out of college. He's what, 22, 23?
Yeah, they're like the same age.
They're the same age, and he's been a pro for 7 years, and Josh is just now getting his cup of coffee.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, and I think in the long run that experience has done Ray a lot of good. I think because of his age and his development, he was probably, talent was carrying him more than in the early parts, but now I think he's starting to hit that developmental point where it's kind of on par with the skill, and then you've got a pretty complete player there, and it helps with all the talent surrounding him. And confidence and goes a long way, and I think that probably provides a lot of confidence. He was arguably my man of the match for the for the Battery matchup, and I hope that he has another season like he did last year, really broke out, because I mean, technically on the ball, he's probably one of the most skilled players I've seen for
Yeah.
Louisville City, period. Like he's just like, it's like another, like the ball's like another appendage to him. He has like that level of control. It's very impressive.
And then, I mean, there's just a lot of places to go with this team. There's a lot of places and a lot of people you can just kind of point at, and we could talk about them all day long. Zach Duncan is a guy that I loved from Memphis last year. He was so good coming over from A League, I do believe. And
So.
then, like we mentioned, Taylor Davila. Manny Perez doesn't really get the flowers he deserves, but he's fantastic. Amadou Diaz, again, he does get his flowers, to be fair, but he's also fantastic. Jansen Wilson, again, amazing. Arturo Ordonez, defensive player of the season a couple years ago.
Mhm.
Kyle Adams, fantastic. I mean, we go through this entire lineup and you can just fawn over it. But weirdly, the biggest question mark is, I can't believe I'm saying this, Philip Goodrum. And it's not because Philip Goodrum's a question mark. It's just Wilson Harris was that good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. From, I have a sample size of 3 to work off of, the 2 friendlies and then the first match of the season. And it feels like Philip Goodrum's a little cold right now, to me. It's and that's, again, that goes back to that question of like, if things aren't working out with him, like if you need to make some sort of swap, who do you put in? It's going to be somebody like Brian Ownby, Sam Gleedle.
Sam Gleedle.
Yeah, he can. Yeah, he's kind of a Swiss Army knife. And Jansen Wilson could probably even slot over. But again, they're all not traditional strikers. So until I kind of really see that in action, make me a little nervous. I feel like Brian Ownby would probably be the best fit there, considering his injury history, whatnot. It'd be like a lot less running, can save him for short, like fast burst, kind of being in that more offensive oriented role. I mean, still defensive responsibilities. He is the biggest question mark in terms of that team, and I think that when he does start scoring, he's going to hit he's going to hit his stride, get some confidence. But until that point, until he finds that rhythm, I'm thinking the goals will likely probably come from elsewhere. But you never know. Hoping I just kind of caught his bad matches, and it's going to be great from here on out. But not. I'm sure you guys have like no sympathy for us for our plight. This is our biggest concern about the roster. And even then I realize it's kind of like a half-ass concern.
I mean, yes. I mean, for me, it's like, am I really concerned for Louisville City as the Birmingham fan? No, I'm not. I'll be honest. I am a Birmingham fan, right? That I'm not going to try to hide from that. I'm not going to try to be all like, I'm reporter or I am journalist. I have no biases.
I say regularly, I'm a fan first, and I get you.
Like, I am a fan, but I also look at this Louisville team with USL show hat on. And if I am being really just super objective, nitpicky, I'm seeing a team that I did predict to finish below Charleston. And honestly, it's because of Cal Jennings, because we saw what he was last year. Philip Goodrum, not his fault. He was at Tulsa, who they were Tulsa. And then Lou City comes in and kind of saves him and says, "Hey man, we'll pay that giant transfer fee. We'll get you out of Tulsa. Do you like horses? You like bourbon? Do you want to have a quick drive to Indiana? Everyone does. Come on." And so they get him out of Tulsa, but he doesn't have to play because Wilson Harris is playing like his hair's on fire. He never actually has to come in and get real minutes. And when he did play, he was scoring, but he didn't have to be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't truly had the help like this since 22 Memphis. That's 2-3 years ago now. That's a long time in the soccer world. And that kind of level of question mark makes me worry for Lou City. And when I say worry, it's the question between 1 and 2. that's still a home playoff game and very
Mhm.
likely hosting Eastern Conference Finals. Like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think your prediction is like completely fair to maybe not immediately pencil us into number one. I mean, each year the league grows stronger and stronger. The competition gets harder, and we might not have the ball bounce our way as much. And Charleston, like again, they're a worthy opponent. So I really just want to see the team be in a position to lock up, home field as much as possible in the playoffs. But I'm also realistic that we might not win the Supporter Shield again, and that's fine. I think we have the makeup where it's definitely possible. But yeah, to the Philip Goodrum thing, yeah, I think he's going to have to earn that confidence from fans of being the guy. Like you said, he hasn't really had to be yet. We know he has the background and the talent to do so, but we've got to be able to see it put together. But ultimately, even if that does take some time, I mean, especially considering we have essentially the same roster from last season, and we had so many different goal scorers last season. I'm not too concerned that that's going to hurt us too badly because we just have the output from elsewhere. If we were like a one-trick pony and all of all our goals came from Wilson Harris, I would have been more worried about this, but they come from other places too. So I think he has that playing in his favor, that if he does kind of need that ramp up to become the guy.
I know this is an episode for Birmingham fans to get to know Louisville City, but well, right after this is going to be my basically post-match reactions for Loudon, where I'm going to be where we're going to listen to the post-match presser from Tommy Sohn and Jake Roof and kind of talking about it. So stick along for that, Legion fans. But this is still in the end kind of a way for Legion fans to learn about their own team, because this is the first match for themselves. You and I kind of talked about it pre-show. The one thing that killed this Birmingham team was the fact that they could not deal with the press. There's not a more effective pressing team in the league right now than Louisville City. I mean, you saw the scoreline 3-1 to Loudoun United. From what you saw against Charleston, how worried should the Three Sparks be?
Um, Worried. I don't want to. I don't want to be. I'm not trying to be cocky or anything, but like it is very much the team of last year, like you said, with just a few minor tweaks, but by and large, the same team, the same philosophy. So what you saw last year, whether it was against Birmingham or Louisville City playing against other opponents, I would fully expect that. And I kept waiting last year. I'm like, all right, when's the bottom going to fall out on this? Like, when are teams going to figure out how we're playing and effectively play against it? And I mean, really, aside from Rhode Island, nobody I think had any type of consistent success, let alone the very few teams that I would say had success. So yeah, unless Coach Stone has some tricks up his sleeve tactically, um, I think it could be challenging, particularly if the press has not been very kind to Birmingham, because you're going to get it.
I don't know how much you've had a chance to look over the Birmingham roster yet.
I haven't got to comb over it too thoroughly, unfortunately.
So, for a lot of outside fans, they saw the splashy names of Ronaldo Damas and a Danny Trejo, not that one, signing for the team. And a lot of people were just like, this has to be it. Like, you don't sign those guys unless you are going to have a home playoff game. You can't just sign those guys. And I'm asking you as an outsider, right? You see guys with track records like a Redondo Damas, with a Danny Trejo. I know how Lou City fans feel about Enzo Martinez. Fanuel Kavita has been around this league for a long, long time. Tyler Pasher is a Louisville City killer. Every Louisville City fan has a feeling about Tyler Pasher, although I don't think he's going to be playing in this upcoming match. As an outsider, you have seen this Birmingham team a lot. You have seen 2 years ago Birmingham do the double on Lou City, and last year Lou City kill Birmingham both home and away. If this team does not make the playoffs again, or let's just say even not be competitive for a home playoff match, would you consider that to be a failure for how talented this team is?
I mean, I certainly think the talent's there. You also have to take into account the level of competition you're up against. It's like, it's like an arms race in the East, and then you get somebody like Rhode Island coming out of nowhere to prove that they're an immediate problem to be dealt with. You got teams like Tampa, who even on their worst days are still like really good. I hate to make this comparison, but like they're like the Steelers in that sense, where they're just like a well-run franchise where you always know they're going to be some level of good, and it's super
Yeah.
annoying. So like, like that's Tampa. So all that to say is that like, I mean, there's a lot of teams that might have stronger cases. But yeah, I mean, like you have a lot of known names, like a lot of known talent, and it's about bringing it together. And especially with the playoff field as wide as it is, I certainly think that playoffs should be on the Legion's radar. Ideally, I think you'd like to be shooting for like that first round home game. Tough, but maybe doable go if things go right. The one thing I would say though, particularly in this early part of the season, is when you get these new signings, sometimes it really just takes time for things to click. Like it's a slow build up. You feel like they've had enough time in preseason and whatnot. You're like, oh, why can't they just figure it out? Like there's a lot of things. It's just like repetition in terms of like, somebody going on a run and knowing what their tendencies are. Do they like to maybe like cut left or right after so often or whatnot? The little like unexplainable things that these guys pick up when they play there for a long time. That's what's going to take some time to build up. So even if it is a slow start, I'd encourage to keep the faith until these new pieces can really get properly acclimated. But I think a lot of it will fall on the coach and how he deploys the team. Each year I have pretty high hopes for Birmingham, and I feel like they always kind of exceed what like under achieve from where I think that they might land beginning in the season. And I'm hoping you guys buck this trend this year. Like particularly last year, I'm like on paper, I'm like, I think you guys will be pretty solid, and didn't get quite as high as I would have thought. But here's to a new year, and hopefully, a few signings and a few tweaks, and you guys are in a very different position.
Kind of one of the last few things before I do let you go, and I appreciate you taking the time, Benton Newman of Vamos Morados, and also ESPN. Like that's pretty sick. You can just put that in your bio. How cool is that? I would love to be able to do that. Just be like, I've been on the radio and they didn't kick me off. Like,
right? Yeah. I just keep waiting. It's like, all right, when they're not going to let me in the studio? When am I going to pull at the door and it's just shut and they just shake their head from the inside?
But we're having conversations at this point. I mean, you've talked about the Eastern arms race. The West has its arms race of sorts, but the East more so really felt like it was a proper arms race this offseason. You saw Rhode Island make good signings, but most importantly, they get Maxi freaking Rodriguez. You get Charleston, who they bring in the second best number 6 in the league with Hosu because they already had the best number 6 in the league with Malloy. Oh, and who do they replace Nick Marcanic with? Cal Jennings. Just shut up. That's messed up. And then we talk about Lou City, where they are the best team in the league last year, and all they do is replace their leading goal scorer with Philip Goodrum, and they lose Elijah Winder, but they replace him with Zach Duncan, who was top 5 attacking midfielder in the league right now, and Kevon Lambert, who has been one of the best CDM center backs in the league in the last 5 years. You even look down the list. One of my sneaky Players Shield winning teams this year, I think like 10% chance when we do our 90, 50s, 10s. My 10% sprinkle on winning the Players Shield was Pittsburgh Riverhounds, because that team is going to defense, and they bought Augie Williams. That man scores goals. You have Birmingham, who had an arms race of their own, who completely revamped the team. You have a Tampa Bay Rowdies team who just looks great on paper, and they bring in really fun talent. you even get down to a Loudon, you get down to some of these Detroit City teams. You're just like, these teams are competent that 5, 6, 10 years ago when Lou City joined this league, some of these teams down at the very bottom, like we're talking about a Detroit City team that's on the cusp of making the playoffs that look like they could be a playoff team, maybe just miss, who might just win the whole dang league 10 years ago. Isn't it crazy how much this league has grown?
Yeah, it's super insane. I love to see the growth. One of the best things about the growth of this league is that you're seeing a lot more consistency on rosters, and when you have that consistency, I feel like it leads to better on the field play. I mean, rewind just a couple of years, and there's like just mass turnover on these teams, but that's not really such the norm anymore. And I really like that because again, it just kind of really it helps show what organizations like are really like well put together, who are able to not only bring in talented players but keep them for extended periods of time together. That's been a really fun development to kind of watch and see over time.
Just to kind of keep harping on this a little bit, a few years ago, you and I did an episode on Hammering Down trying to key in where is the USL Championship? Like, what level are they at? Um, we kind of landed on the Australian A League, which, by the way, that's available on ESPN Plus again. If you want to be a sicko and watch at like 3 o'clock in the morning, I've done it a few
Well, I'm
nights
glad you told me
already.
that.
It is sicko o'clock. Like if you are if you get up early, they are back. It is awesome. Um, but we landed on the A League because we're like the salary similar, the level of competition is pretty similar. There's a lot of players that kind of go back and forth. You've seen a Zach Duncan come from the A League where he was really good over there, and at first he struggled here. You had a Liam Rose from El Paso, granted it's El Paso, but they come over and he was good, not great. And he goes back over there and he's one of the best midfielders in the league again. Just since the 2-3 years ago, since we've done that episode, I think the championship has surpassed League One or the A League in Australia. And I understand that it's marginal growth. And when we're talking
Mhm.
about England, we're looking at like, if we're being honest, the worst team in the championship is well in the Vanarama National League. The best team in the championship might be competing for League One, maybe. It's a wide gap, but it's just incrementally getting bigger and better.
Yep. Yeah. The growth is steady. Certainly doesn't happen overnight. I like to think, yeah, that they've continued to make leaps forward. I think one of the biggest signs of that will be as the league continues to export players, particularly to bigger leagues. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one thing for these boomerang guys, like a guy who comes from one country to the US and plays. Like there's a whole set of challenges with that, whether it be language barriers, cultural barriers, just that entire upheaval, that off the pitch stuff that I think does impact their play on the pitch to an extent. But when you can show you can develop guys that are wanted by bigger leagues elsewhere, I think that's where you can more confidently talk about the growth. And we've continued to see that more and more in recent years. And as the sport continues to grow in this country, I think the USL is going to be growing right along with it. Because I mean, MLS isn't the only game in town, and there have been some young talents that have chosen the USL ranks over the MLS. So, um, like anytime your club wins any sort of accolade or trophy or anything, I think we need to be really appreciative of it, considering that it's only going to get harder.
Yeah.
Like, one day Louisville City's probably not going to have such a seismic lead over some other teams in this league here. Like, these margins are getting thinner and thinner year by year. And ultimately that's a good thing. I want the level of competition to continue to increase. And also because I trust that, that the leaders of our club will do the right thing they need to do to put the team in a position for success. So looking forward to seeing what the soccer ecosystem looks like in just a couple of years, particularly with a potential pro rel being added
Drink.
into the mix.
There it is. Take your shot if you were waiting for the pro rel. Um, yeah, no, I absolutely. And it's it's just something that is just so interesting to me. And I think one thing you can definitely point to as well, Lou City dominated this league. They truly crushed this league, if you will. And that's for the Lou City fans. I don't
I
know how
got
many
it.
Legion, I don't know how many Legion fans are going to understand
The
that
deep
one,
cut.
but I dropped that little. I'm just going to drop that one in there. But truly crushed this league, and they win championship year one. Then they go back to back, and they've been to the final, but they haven't won it yet, or they haven't won it since the back to back. And honestly, I think even though the Players Shield is great, and I personally believe the Players Shield is the real champion of the league, I stand by that pretty heavily. Playoffs are a crapshoot, and I don't think that's the right way to crown
I
champion.
mean, you have a good
However,
argument.
playoffs are awesome.
Yep. There's a reason we do
Playoff
them.
Playoffs are awesome. And I think the fact that Lou City has been so good year in, year out, has not won since they're back to back, again, shows how much the level has come up. Like last year was the first year you guys haven't made the Eastern Conference final. And Rhode Island was not just a random crapshoot team. They earned their way there. They look awesome on paper. They always did. You have a Charleston team who looks honestly unbeatable at times. Like, what do you do when they are really on their game? What can you do? And then you look at anybody in the West. The team that beat Lou City a few years ago was, according to our friend Ryan Allen, the best team in league history. San Antonio. That's the team that beat Lou City. It wasn't, oh, Lou City had a bad night. It was the best team ever, right? Those are the people that Lou City are losing to. And you said hold on to those moments. If Lou City wins a championship this year, you tell me. But I feel like they'll celebrate a championship this year harder than they did any time in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially considering, I'd like to think that we would put ourselves in a position where if we were to make some sort of final, that it would be at Lynn Family Stadium. And the thought of that, yeah, that gets me excited. But I would lose it because I recognize the difficulty, how long of the season is, how much of a grind it is. So you look at some of these teams we consider like crap on paper. The guys still have to work their asses off out there on the pitch to get that win. You have to go out and you can't just be talented. You have to go and execute. You have to use that talent well in that training. And like I said, the margins are getting thinner. So like the tactics and stuff, like how you want to go out and play against these teams become more and more important. So yeah, I'm trying to make a conscious effort not to take anything for granted. Like you pointed out, last time we won all was in 2018. Made it back to the final a couple of times, won a few other pieces of hardware along the way, but we haven't won the big one in a while. So it's gonna hit real nice if we are able to pull it off sometime, hopefully in the near future.
Do you ever just drop the fact that Didier Drogba's last ever match was in Louisville, Kentucky? Because I think that's just a hilarious fact.
Oh, it's like such a silly stat. Played at that little Lynn Stadium, like with a train going by and stuff. With the finals, it's a cool thing. I was sad I was not actually able to be in attendance that night. I had a friend who had a rehearsal dinner for his wedding that night. It was a Thursday. Why a Thursday? So I didn't get to witness that in person, but it's a fun memory. I get to go back and relive on TV because I did get to catch the end of it live on TV though.
There's two crimes going on there. Hold on. I forgot the finals used to be held in the middle of the week. That was insane.
Yep.
The rehearsal was on a Thursday?
Yep. Trust me, I'm with you. I remember vividly. He's a good friend. I was in the wedding. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been there. Yeah,
I don't know.
very unfortunate for me. So I feel like I've been owed a championship to see in person. That's why, like I traveled to San Antonio in 22 to see that. Like you said, San Antonio is a great team, but Louisville City also did kind of hobble to the finish line there. There were some injuries. Wilson Harris was out there playing like hurt and stuff like that. So, I mean, it was a great run, great experience, but like I feel owed a championship in person, and I hope to get one before life pulls me in other directions that I can't be involved as I currently am.
Fair enough. Well, Benton, where can the people find you on all the things and any kind of work that you may be doing?
Yeah, I'm still technically on social media, but I don't actively get on there. At Purple SDF, if you want to see my Twitter history, I'll post on there occasionally. Really, I get in, get out, post my links. But my main pride and joy is my website, vamosmorados.com. Write about the team there. Got a lot of great history on there. Try to do some unique pieces. So it's been a lot of fun, and it's open, and ultimately that is what's opened all the doors it has for me, getting the opportunity to do the Soccer City Radio, occasionally call some games and whatnot, and get linked up with great guys like you. Again, like I said at the top of the show, always love when I get the call to join Hammering Down, talk with my good buddy Kayla. I need to make a trip to Birmingham workout in one of these upcoming seasons, because it's been a minute since I got to go down there and hang out with you all.
Well, I need to come up at some point as well, so we'll definitely be meeting up at some point soon.
Absolutely.
For Legion fans, or if you're a Lou City fan who just wants to keep listening, thanks. I am going to be breaking down the press conference, kind of talking about what Tommy said. We are finally at the point where I can talk about people talking about things. It's very fun. And so please stick around for that while I bid Benton adieu. For me, I will see you in a second. But Ben, thank you so much for hopping on, man.
Take care, everybody.
All right. Welcome to part 2 of this episode, where I'm going to be kind of listening to the Tommy Sohn section of the press conference and just kind of give my thoughts on the matter. If you're watching this episode, hi. I've been to a different location. I've been watching a lot of these I guess just a lot of podcasts and stuff where the person's just on the couch chilling, and I've liked the vibe of it. So if you're someone who's watching this, I'm on a couch. I hope you like the vibe of it. If you're someone who's listening, this makes no difference to you. So go on with your life, as I will. Let's go ahead and get into this Tommy Sohn post-match interview, why don't we?
All right, Tommy. Good start, but then after that, tough finish. Obviously, I guess just your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, you have a dream start, and then we had just catastrophic goals that we gave up, and really lost the flow of the game as well. I don't think we kept the ball well enough and stuff we worked on to do. So um, obviously, you only get one chance for a home opener, and dropping is so disappointing.
First thing that kind of popped up for me is he mentions the flow of the game. He said we kind of lost the flow of the game. We kind of held control well, or just kind of held control of the ball, like the actual holding onto the ball was not bad, but the flow of the game is where this team struggled. And guess what? Tommy Sohn's a really smart guy. um, I completely agree. Where I saw Legion, while they did not hold possession of the ball, they were really good at going side to side, the way it felt like to me. It felt like going from, because they were starting in the back, or they were kind of playing from the back. And we'll talk about this a little bit later with Tommy Sohn, his section of this, where he mentions, and I mentioned the fact that, like at the very beginning of the match, they are really emphasizing playing the ball to Ramis and then playing the ball over to Fanwell. And then they would sometimes go over to Moses Mensah. Then they would go over to Jake Roof. And then the ball would go up to Roman Torres, and then to Kobe Hernandez Foster, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it was working well side to side, but vertically it wasn't working. And because of that, Loudon was really controlling the flow of the game. Legion weren't able to get into the flow of the game. While Legion, I thought, were doing a decent job of just literally holding on to the ball, there was no flow. It was a lot of, we're getting pressed. Let's work out of this press. Let's try to dribble away from the press and just see what we can do. And I think that's something that Legion really got caught up into, and that the flow wasn't great. If you're watching, you can see my cat behind me. Hey, get down. Dude, stop. I swear I give him attention. This is just what he does when I'm not actively paying attention to him. But he gets plenty of it. He gets more than plenty. Let's keep going.
So obviously 2 minutes in you score, but 2 minutes later they scored. Do you think there was a lack of concentration by your players, like that they got too excited with that opening goal?
Not sure. I mean, the man, we lost the mark. I watched it right after, and we just let a guy go, and just can't do that. So again, that's kind of what happened for us, though. But then you got to find a way to pull back together and go through those moments. That's what good teams do. So just disappointing.
I asked Jay.
So if you kind of heard it, it wasn't, and it was from one of the reporters from Birmingham Sports. He kind of asked them, like, did they just lose concentration? And he said no. Like, the first goal was just a man kind of losing his marking, and it looks like it was Roman Torres, who, what a debut for the guy, right? 2 minutes into his professional career, he gets an assist. Cool. A few minutes later, he loses a man to give up a goal. Not great. And then he gets hurt. Right? That's it's kind of tough. And I just it's one of those situations where you look at the goals scored, right? One of the goals was a first time professional, Roman Torres, just moves it, losing his mark. It does unfortunately happen. Then you have another moment where Matt Van Oekel makes a save, and honestly, really kind of Moses Mensah slipping a little bit, sort of creates the moment, creates the space for the Loudon player to take a shot. Everybody else sort of scrambles. I don't want to say completely scrambles, but sort of scrambles. Matt Van Oekel makes a fantastic save. It happens to land to a Loudon player who finishes it first time, who Matt really wasn't that far off from saving either. And so you're looking at two goals that one of them is a set piece. And I know you could say Legion's goal is a set piece, and I don't want to be too, what's the word? Hypocritical. But you have a guy that loses their man and another guy or another goal where it just doesn't work, right? Like a save happens to fall into a player who finishes it fantastically the first time. And the last goal is really where Legion were picked apart defensively. The other two weren't really picked apart defensively. They just were mistakes. Not really, I mean, I guess you could call them concentration, but even the second one's not a concentration thing.
Jake about it, but I mean, Loudon is known for their press, especially coming out of the center of their field. After the second goal, it felt like it settled a little bit. He mentioned that the pace of the ball was going a little bit too quick, not enough touches. Was there something else that you saw? Because it really felt like the second half was a lot better.
Yeah, it was better. I think obviously it's the first game, so I think we were a little bit nervous and there wasn't enough composure. I talk about the poise, having guys that can put their foot on the ball and keep it. And I thought Kobe did a decent job of that, but we needed a little bit more of that. And Roman has some of that. Obviously, he went out, but we need a little bit more poise and just confidence to keep possession.
And Jake, you
So, he mentions obviously Kobe has been a pro for a long time now. You can tell. He mentions Roman, and if you can really hear the question, by the way, or the kind of response, basically I just kind of asked about the press and how they dealt with it, because in the second half it felt so much better. And he mentions the fact that there was not a lot of composure. And yeah. Yeah. I mentioned going side to side. Legion were really good at going side to side, but it felt like, and Jacob mentioned this, there was not a lot of piecing together passes. There was not a lot of doing that, really. There was not a lot of how do we connect together. The back line and the front line were just not connected. And it wasn't, from kind of like what Tommy said, it wasn't out of a lack of talent in the midfield. Kobe was great again, Roman Torres looked pretty good for a first-time professional. We talked about his mistakes, but for a first-time professional, he really stepped up. Can't remember if it was this particular section or if it's later on, but he kind of mentioned missing a guy like Enzo. He mentions missing Enzo's fire, right? And I'm willing to agree with that, but I think more than Enzo's fire and Enzo's fight, Enzo's composure is what we were really missing in the midfield. Guys like Dawson looked great. Dawson was honestly my MVP aside from Matt Van Okel. Matt Van Okel played absolutely fantastic. But if you're looking at an outfield player, I'm looking at a Dawson McCartney who looked amazing, but they had to move him over to the left-hand side. That's just something that unfortunately was the case. Um, it was out of necessity where Danny Trejo gets hurt and he gets out with the concussion protocol. Never has not been really an update on that since, so we'll see. I don't know, just very interesting. I'll be fascinated to find out if that composure thing sorts itself out against the Louisville City side with Enzo Martinez back into the lineup. Maybe there will be that composure back. Maybe they'll be able to slow down the ball and pass and make some passes together and not just kind of lump it forward when you get a little panicked.
Use the word disjointed audio and talk about like the troubles in attack. Is that, do you think, just down to the fact there's a lot of new faces in the team, or how do you go?
That's part of it, but a lot of it is, I mean, if you look at their forwards, they did a really good job of hold-up play, and our forwards didn't, you know. So we have to find a way to get our forwards involved, whether it's balls we play to them or the types of runs they make to connect, you know, and their forwards did a better job of it.
You mentioned the hold up play out of the forwards. Is that kind of what went into the decision to take Trejo off, or was there something else going on?
No, somehow he got hit in the head, so that was a concussion. So
Dawson looked immense playing over on the left-hand side, obviously bring Trejo into the middle and move Dawson over to the left. He looked absolutely fantastic and came close to getting a goal a few times. How do you feel about his performance?
yeah, you know, Dawson, I've moved him around a lot, and he just brings a lot of different qualities. He was one of the guys that was really winning balls for us and creating, whether it's his own opportunities or opportunities for other people. So always puts in a really good shift.
And then another player, I just want to get
Yeah, I mean, I really cannot praise Dawson enough. I thought what he was doing to create for others as well was great. He came really close to getting the second goal for Legion. He was just creating so much where I kind of fought pretty hard the idea of Dawson playing on the left and Trejo in the middle. And I still think I am, honestly. Danny Trejo does look best when he is playing that left wing, but Dawson also, I think, needs to be up there. I think there is a world where the three-man back line is the answer. Don't say it too loud. But having both Dawson and Trejo working together on that left-hand side, I think could be really impactful. Obviously you would end up losing a guy like Mensah, which is not ideal. You don't want to lose a guy like that. Granted, you could also play him as the third center back, I suppose, but then you would have to lose a fullback. So that means, are you going to drop someone like a Jake Roof? Maybe. I mean, that's a hard conversation. You could also make Jake Roof the center back, and there's a whole lot of conversations there. But there was I think that allowing Dawson to really be formally a part of the attack, not having to do box to box stuff, but really be a mainstay up front, I think this team's better for it.
your thoughts on. So obviously when he's 16 years old, you throw him in open or like big game. What convinced you that he's ready for that at such a young age?
He's been showing well. You know, he went with the national team, and obviously some of the games weren't the toughest, but we saw it in training that he's doing well. Tonight, you know, the back line wasn't good, not necessarily his fault. But we weren't good as a group in the back, and that has to get solved.
During the first half, there was, and second half as well, there was a big emphasis on playing it out from the back, having the center back start with it and pass it over to Matt. At the end of the first half, kind of moved away from that. Was there just a disconnect between the midfield and the back line, or was there something else?
Yeah, I mean, some of the spacing, but our backs have to have the confidence to play, and our mids have to show in those areas. Like I said, I think when Roman was in there with Kobe, I don't think we had good starting points. They were supposed to split that to be able to find our way out, and we also have have the confidence to play those guys, and I don't think we had that tonight.
And then Loudon was getting
So that was kind of the comment that really piqued my interest. And this is why I love these press conferences, right? Because a lot of people, I think, blame Tommy. And he kind of mentioned the midfield wasn't really in the right positions. Now, maybe this is a training thing where the two midfielders were not properly taught or trained on where to stand, where to go, where to position themselves, when to drop deep, when to go forward. But clearly Tommy has a vision on where they're supposed to be. And I think that's important. I also will mention towards the end of the game when Timmy Reku came into the match, that midfield looked a lot better. And is it any coincidence that the midfield consisted of Timmy? It consisted of Kobe, and then you had Dawson just kind of playing in there as well. That's kind of the most common midfield setup that we saw. I I think that is impactful. I think that's important. You can tell that sometimes I feel like these guys have not played together before. This is a moment where losing a guy like Alex Crognale does matter because even though, yes, Ramis has been with the team, but like Alex Crognale had been around for 5 years. I think that's something that you do miss. There's a lot of those old guard players that you end up losing out on and just saying, "Well, now what? What do we do now? Where do they go? What do we do?" Um, I think that there was some interesting decisions that went along with this, and I think there's a world where if Trejo can't start due to concussion and Tyler Pasher is back healthy now, I say healthy, he's at least in training, um, where maybe the conversation is, do you drop Trejo for a Temi? Maybe. I think that having Temi and Kobe play together could be really good. I think that Temi has proved to be a big physical body that you're going to need against the Louisville City. And I thought that was just really fascinating to see how much more together they seemed when that's a common midfield pairing that we saw in the in the preseason. So maybe that's what the answer is. I think that hearing that though of they just weren't in the right positions. Again, I don't know if that's a blame thing. It could just be the fact that Loudon came out in a press that was so overwhelming that the players got overwhelmed. And I don't want to say forgot, but just were, again, overwhelmed by the situation. It's certainly a possibility. But this is why I love these press conferences because as opposed to just being saying, well, midfield bad, Tommy's fault, hearing a reason that the midfield did not play the way why they were supposed to, why there was such a disconnect, I think is fascinating for fans to hear.
a lot of like space out on the flanks. Obviously, they have a five-back formation, so the wing backs will push in pretty high. Were you purposefully like leaving that space for them, or did you want your team to?
Well, we plan on pitching to the side, and unfortunately, when you switch to point of attack, that's where you create your isolations because they're pushing their backs for that. So through the middle, we needed to win more balls.
Last question for me, Coach. Next week is Louisville City. We know what they are historically. Before last year, we really played them well doing the double and just nicking games off them. Are you excited to have them at home next week?
Well, I mean, we have to come back and prove that we're a better team than we showed today. I think we did miss some Enzo's heart. He kind of drives the group a little bit, but you can't be relying on one guy. Someone's got to pick it up when he's not in there. We didn't do that today.
Thanks, Coach.
And then Stephen Turnbull was just missing from the game today. Is he injured?
No, he's not injured. It was a coach's decision.
Okay. And then Roman, can you tell us anything about what happened?
Not sure yet. We'll assess that when he sees our doc and see where he's at.
Thank you.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
So last little bit there, Turnbull did not start off a coach's decision, not an injury. Interesting. Immediately pays off for Coach Stone, by the way. I don't know if like coaches sit there and just like they celebrate obviously when they get a goal. They should. They're the coach. But like I wonder if they celebrate a little extra hard when they're just like coach's decision worked out. Look at me. I made a decision and it worked. All those stupid little podcasters who have their opinions and are idiots. If you're audio only, I'm pointing at myself. If you're an absolute dummy, they can absolutely suck it right now because I was right. So look at what I mean. Listen, if it was me, I would. Like if I was the coach, I would sit there and just be like, that's right. I made that decision. But Turnbull doesn't play out of coach's decision. And I think that's really interesting because Turnbull was a transfer. He cost the team money. And I'm not saying that's a reason to start Turnbull, but I like that they allowed Tommy Stone to make those hard decisions. Obviously, he's the manager. But I mean, a lot of coaches get flack and they get some pushback from general managers being like, well, we paid money for this guy and he's really good, so play him. I said in the preseason that Jake Rufus is going to shock people. I think what he's been doing as a right back has been really impressive. I think what Stephen Turnbull offers is different. But if Turnbull starts and is better than what we saw with Jake, great. If Jake continues to improve and is the better player than Stephen Turnbull, I say Spencer Turnbull. I keep doing this. I keep confusing him with like the 6-man starter from the Phillies last year. I think maybe he played at Alabama. Spencer Turnbull. I keep doing that. So if I say Spencer Turnbull, just know I've been on Baseball Reference too much. But if Roof is playing better than Turnbull and is getting these starts, I think it's a good thing for Legion. Because that means A, you have two really good right back options. B, Turnbull was a borderline all USL guy last year. And Jake is proving up to be up to the task. We'll see if he gets that start against Loudoun. I'll be interested. But something interesting. So that's kind of this little section. I'm going to try to set a better microphone down for these press conferences so it will be better audio. I know that was a little quiet. I'm really sorry. Just kind of give me some feedback if it's something you liked or just kind of skip past it altogether. But thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you all. Till next time, guys. Keep hammering on.